Hi, I'm Casey, and today we're going to talk about all the books I've DNF'd in 2023. I have stopped talking about DNFs in my wrap-ups just because with changing the formatting, I don't think they fit in anymore, but I am still trying to DNF books more liberally, and so far I think it's been successful. I've only DNF'd 6, but I've also not felt like I have forced myself to read something that I didn't want to. So really quickly, I just thought it'd be fun to come in and check in on all the books I've DNF'd this year. We're going to start with the most recent book I DNF'd, and that was Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton. I picked this up because this box told me to. I have a series of videos on this channel of picking a post-it out of the box, and the post-its represent, the different colors represent different things. Whatever, you can check out one of those videos if you want. But this was picked and I attempted to read this and I gave up, I think, right around here. This is around like the 20 or 30% mark, and I honestly just hated this. This is a fiction that is supposed to read like a historical translated text from a, I believe, Middle Eastern man in 922 AD, and it is as he travels, because at the behest of his, what is it, the Caliph of Baghdad? Yeah. And he explores the world, meets different cultures, yada yada yada. This was horrible. It was sexist and misogynistic and xenophobic and honestly just really uncomfortable to read, and I did not even make it that far into here. Judging from other things I've seen from other reviews of people who had finished the whole thing, that was going to get worse just as the book went on, and I honestly did not want to read any more of this. I was not having a good time. I thought I was going to hate this, and I did end up hating it. So good for me, I guess. The previous book I DNF'd was Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. This one hurts a little bit because I really loved Kindred by this author and then promptly bought a lot of her other books. And I should not have read this second. I was trying to read this right after my mother-in-law did, and I only made it around 30% before I completely gave up. This is a fiction following a young woman who appears to be around 10 to 12 years old named Shori. Shori is a vampire, and she is in fact much older than she appears, and the reason I DNF'd this is because she begins an explicit and intense sexual relationship with a middle-aged man, and it was extremely uncomfortable to read. I was listening to the audiobook of this. I have clips of my genuine reaction as I was listening to what was happening, and my face did this the whole time. I was not having a good time. It was really uncomfortable to read. I believe that is the author's intention. I do trust Butler to write a story for a reason. Unfortunately, it was just too much for me and I could not handle this. I have considered this like a vague soft DNF. I think that this is something I can return to as time goes on and read piece by piece. That fell out of my hands. But I do not think I will ever return to the audiobook. That was just extremely uncomfortable to do, and as much as I say I might read this piece by piece, I honestly do not know if I will ever be able to come back to this. It was just so uncomfortable to read. The previous book I DNF'd was Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. This is a horror novel following a, I believe, late 20s, early 30s something woman as she buys her childhood home. The only not really caveat is her entire family was murdered in that home, and she was found after the gruesome killing of her family in her high chair as a baby, and after she purchases this home, strange things begin to happen. The reason I DNF'd this was honestly pretty simple. I just didn't enjoy it. I was having a bad time with it. I thought that there was too much of this sort of, is it not dynamic with our main character's mental health and the horrific elements happening in the house and the voices she was hearing. It just, I could almost see the writing on the wall for where this was going, or at least where it was going to maybe red herring everything, and I just did not want to read it. I was listening to the audiobook for this, and I was trying to make myself do 10% a day so I could get through it quickly, and I hated it. I was miserable. I was just having a bad time, so I gave up on it, plain and simple. The previous book I DNF'd was Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is a sequel to Bardugo's previous work, Ninth House, and we are continuing to follow Alex Stern at Yale as she does, you know, paranormal shit. I don't know a better description than that, because I honestly didn't make it more than 20% of the way through this book. I just did not care. I tried to start reading it. I had a copy from the library, and I honestly just did not have a good time. I did not think the first 20 pages were anything compelling or interesting, and I knew with this being a new release that there were going to be plenty of other people who wanted to read it, and so I just took it back to the library. I will selfishly say the reason that I tried to read this is that the cover is really dynamic and really captivating, and it is inspired by Beth Cavener's sculpture work, and if you have not heard of Cavener, she is just an incredible artist, and my spouse and I have a giant print signed from of one of her sculptures, and it is just beautiful, and I could tell that this cover was inspired by her work, and so I decided to try it, and I just unfortunately had a bad time. The previous book I DNF'd was Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This is a horror novel following a woman as she is helping take care of her pregnant sister back in their hometown, and she hits an animal with her car and then is mauled and then slowly begins to turn into a werewolf. At least I think that synopsis is right. This is another one that I gave up on around like the 30% mark. This is just a case of, I knew this wasn't for me. I grabbed it because it was on Goodreads Best of Horror, and I really wanted to push myself, and I still hated it. Cozy horror like this is not for me. I think that, you know, the couple of things I've attempted from Rachel Harrison have been very cozy, softer horror, and I don't want that. I know I don't want it, and I keep trying it. I keep thinking maybe I've, you know, eased up a bit in my old age, but no, unfortunately, this was not for me, and this is another one where I knew that there was a long list of people waiting for it, and so I returned it to the library. Then we are on to the last book, not the last book, the first book that I DNF'd this year, and this was such a big disappointment. This was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a sort of historical magical fiction following a young woman named Addie LaRue as she makes a deal with the devil, and she can live eternally, but once people are sort of out of her sphere of influence, they forget who she is. This is a internet darling of a book, and I really hated it. I think I made this 60% of the way through, and I was not captivated. I was not interested. It felt like several stories kind of jammed together. It felt like it had gone through so many revisions and edits that the story just didn't feel as cohesive, and it just didn't flow the way I thought it needed to, and I just really found it boring, and I did not care for it at all, and I gave up on it because I just was done. I didn't want to sit through 40% more of this just to continue fucking hating it. And I know that's kind of a controversial opinion, and this is one of the few DNFs I think I've actually talked about in a wrap-up. I talked about it in my January wrap-up, and this one was so frustrating and so sad and so disappointing. Those are the 6 books I've DNF'd so far this year. If you have DNF'd any books, or you feel like there's a book that you should have, please tell me down below in the comments. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear about anyone else's like controversial book opinions. Do algorithm things if you want. If not, I'll see you next Friday, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye. For you, this has been literally no time. For me, this has been 30 minutes of trying to film this video because my dogs can't get their shit together. No. I'm not mad at you. I just want you to settle. No smooch. Okay.